CIA and foreign intelligence agencies illegally targeted 26 Trump associates before 2016 Russia collusion claims, according to a report from Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi. The story is actually pretty shocking and damning, and it's a component of what we've long known, but of course the media says is not true, that Donald Trump was spied on. They used nefarious methods to try and subvert his campaign and his presidency. And the more information that comes out on this story as a bombshell is dropped in 2024, 8 years later, it looks like the Obama administration engaged in what I would only consider to be a act of sedition, a crime against this country, its people, and perhaps even a coup of sorts. I don't know what else to call it. The allegation is quite simple. U.S. intelligence agencies contacted the Five Eyes Spy Club. These are allies around the world, 5 nations that spy on each other's citizens. They allegedly spied on Donald Trump's campaign and his associates, and this was the catalyst for starting the false Russiagate investigation. We know that there was one individual who was actually sentenced to probation for altering an email to create a fake reason to spy on one of Trump's associates. It would seem that this is not new information, but it is another layer to the story that would suggest Democrats, knowing that they would lose to Donald Trump, who was refusing to play ball the way they wanted to, decided to set this country on fire and burn it to the ground. It's funny. When you read about Obamagate or Spygate and these allegations, Wikipedia just says they're all false, debunked, baseless conspiracy theories. How dare you? The funny thing is, it looks like some of them haven't been updated, because the truth is they were spying on Trump Tower. They were spying on Donald Trump. They did alter evidence to create a false reason to spy on Trump associates. These are all facts. Now we're learning that there's this alleged binder that contains all of the information as to how they engaged in this seditious operation. I don't know where the rumor comes from, but Jesse Waters reported just the other night that the binder may be missing. Donald Trump had ordered this information declassified. The conspiracy theory, as it were now, I don't even know if conspiracy theory is the right word because we know this stuff's happening, but the hypothesis is that the reason Donald Trump's home was raided is that they are panicked and desperately trying to find these documents which prove the Obama administration, the CIA, or elements of the previous administration were engaged in seditious actions and perhaps even treasonous actions. The story is absolutely insane. And if true, I don't even want to say if true. I think we have more than enough information going back to prove that the Democratic Party engaged in a seditious conspiracy. Call it a coup. From the Wall Street Journal in 2022, Trump really was spied on. Durham says techies linked to the Clinton campaign had access to White House and Trump Tower internet data. There are so many of these stories. We know at this point exactly what went down. Now, of course, the corporate press is in decay. CBS just announced they're laying off staff members, journalists. Paramount will be firing many people. We've seen the LA Times, even the Wall Street Journal announced they're laying journalists off. At the same time, Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, many other independent reporters are exposing more information, dropping more facts as to what went down. Now, with this report that was released through Public, that's the organization that has published the story, Matt Taibbi and I believe it's Michael Schellenberger's page, they are going to claim that it's conspiracy theory, that it's baseless. They'll say over and over again, presented without evidence. But I want to remind you as we enter this story, which is one of the most consequential and significant stories in a long time in this country's history. When and why do you decide something is true? It's a very difficult question. If I read something in the New York Post or the New York Times, do I assume it's true? I don't. I typically will run it against several other sources and try to find the first layer source material. If the New York Times says a thing happened, then I'll look to see if this is confirmed by other independent reporting. It's supposed to be that in journalism, 3 sources confirm a story and then you can run it. I don't know if we follow those standards anymore. And based on the current state of journalism, there's nothing you can do. I'll put it simply. I trust Taibbi and Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, and many others infinitely more than I would trust anyone at any corporate media outlet. The corporate press, of course, will say it's a conspiracy theory, it's debunked, it's a lie. And I'm just going to remind them, we know that Russiagate was a hoax. We know that it was not a real story. Yet you pursued it for 3 years claiming it was. You have zero credibility. And as such, if these individuals say that they have sources in intelligence who have exposed this, I'm going to go ahead and lean on, I'm going to trust them on this reporting. Here's the news. The New York Post reports, the U.S. intelligence community asked foreign spy agencies to surveil 26 associates of Donald Trump in the run-up to the 2016 election, which triggered the allegations the former president's campaign had been colluding with Russia, according to the report. Former CIA Director John Brennan identified and presented the targets to the U.S. intelligence sharing partners in the so-called Five Eyes agencies, the intelligence gathering organizations in the U.S., United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, according to a report published Monday on Michael Schellenberger's Public Substack. It's the name of it's public. It's not a public. It is called Public. The report by independent journalists Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, and Alex Gutentag has not been confirmed by the Post, nor do I think it matters. If the New York Times wrote a story, then the New York Post would not even bring that up. And this is an important distinction. If the New York Times reported Barack Obama does a backflip, the New York Post will simply write that Barack Obama did a backflip. But when it comes to esteemed journalists who are working for their own publication, now it's we've not confirmed this. Sure. They cite multiple unnamed sources, including ones close to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence led by Rep. Mike Turner, Republican from Ohio. Turner's office did not respond to the Post's request for comment. The U.S. intelligence community identified the 26 Trump associates as people to, quote, bump or make contact with or manipulate, one source told the outlet. In spy speak, bumping is when a reason is manufactured to meet with a target of interest in order to develop a relationship that could lead to intelligence. They were targets of our own IC and law enforcement, targets for collection and misinformation, the source said. Now, I want to pause for a moment. Many of you may be saying, wait. I don't understand. Who's spying on Trump and why? The Five Eyes is an Anglosphere intelligence alliance comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the United States. These countries are parties to the multilateral UK-USA agreement, a treaty for joint cooperation in signals intelligence. Informally, Five Eyes can also refer to the group of intelligence agencies of these countries. So they say it's been established since 1941. Let me tell you how this organization operates and the purpose of Five Eyes. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal to warrantlessly spy on the American people. We know that the NSA has been doing this thanks to the leaks dropped by Edward Snowden. And I make the distinction very clear. Not a whistleblower, leaker. A whistleblower is somebody who says, here is wrongdoing, here is the proof. A leaker is someone who takes a set of documents and releases them to the public. Now, the motivation for Snowden very much so was, in essence, whistleblowing, but there were many documents included in the leaking that did not pertain to these particular actions, but it did prove the NSA was illegally and unconstitutionally spying on the American people. And that's a problem for the U.S. government. So what do? The U.S. government will go to Australia or the UK and say, oh, won't someone spy on this priest? If you get the reference. And then, look, we never asked anyone to spy on anyone. It is not unconstitutional or illegal for the U.S. to spy on a foreign individual. So in the UK, where they have a little bit, I think it's a little bit easier to spy on people than it is in the U.S., they just ask the U.S. to spy on their citizens. You see how simple it is? It's a big club. And they decided, we can get around these pesky human rights protections by simply spying on each other's citizens. And we agree. And this is how they try to pull it off, as if we are stupid. The Obama administration, it would seem, their intelligence agencies, knew that they could not directly engage in these actions, so they asked foreign countries to do it instead, which generated the reason for the Russia collusion narrative. In other words, the U.S. and its allies engaged in a criminal, seditious conspiracy against the upcoming president, the frontrunner for the Republican Party, because this happened before he was even elected, and then sought to sabotage the U.S. presidential administration and the will of the American people. Barack Obama should be impeached because, yes, he would need to be impeached for these actions. He should be convicted. I hate to say it, my friends, that'll never happen. You've got this tremendous story coming out of New York. A Democrat won George Santos' seat because 103 Republicans voted to oust George Santos for no reason. Meanwhile, Democrats would never turn on their own. So long as that's the case, oh man, we're in trouble, I suppose. They say, quote, they were targets of our own intelligence community and law enforcement, targets for collection and misinformation, the source said. Britain's government communications headquarters intelligence apparatus, GCHQ, was making contact with Trump associates as early as March 2016. They were making contacts and bumping Trump people going back to March, a source told the outlet. They were sending people around the UK, Australia, Italy, the Mossad in Italy. The MI6 was working in an intelligence school they had set up. A GCHQ spokesperson told the outlet that it claims it was asked to conduct wiretapping against the then president-elect. Claims that it was, quote, asked to conduct wiretapping against the then president-elect are nonsense. Told the outlet that claims that it was. They do this weird thing with the quotes. They're saying it's not true. Intelligence related to the alleged surveillance effort is housed in a 10-inch binder, according to the outlet, which Trump ordered to be declassified at the end of his presidency and could contain evidence that multiple U.S. intelligence officials broke laws against spying and election interference. The whereabouts of the alleged thick binder are unknown. The Trump campaign and the CIA did not respond to the Post's request for comment. Warrantless surveillance of a U.S. person is specifically prohibited by U.S. law. Former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith was sentenced to probation in 2021 after admitting that he falsified an email to renew a wiretap against Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Page had been wiretapped after intelligence sources suspected he may have been targeted by Russian spies. The wiretap, which was approved by the secret Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, was reviewed several times after it was granted. Last March, Special Counsel John Durham concluded that the FBI investigation of Trump's alleged collusion with Russia was seriously flawed and had no basis in evidence, even after a 4-year review of the probe. In response, the FBI said it had implemented dozens of corrective actions since the improper Trump probe, and that the missteps identified in the report could have been prevented. In 2022, Taibbi and Schellenberger were involved in the publishing of the Twitter Files expose, which detailed how the social media giant's previous management team sought to silence controversial voices and suppress news items, such as the Post's reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop. My friends, there is a deep state. There is a criminal enterprise operating within the United States. I don't have any answers for you. I don't know how we deal with this. I can only say, maybe Donald Trump gets elected in November and we see some reforms. But this is why I feel like the country will rip itself in twain before they ever allow that to happen. As much as many people are like, Tim talks about civil war all the time. Well, aside from the report that Georgia is sending about 20 National Guardsmen to assist with logistics and engineering, the Texas National Guard in defiance of the Biden administration, those are shocking reports. That's breaking information as of yesterday. We read the Boston Globe report about the Democrat wargaming of the 2020 election. And in their proposed scenario, should Donald Trump win the 2020 election, they would advocate that the West Coast states secede from the Union, or at the very least threaten to secede unless their demands were met. Of course, Donald Trump didn't win in 2020. I think it's fair to say that Trump won the election but lost the presidency and lost the vote. And I'll clarify that distinction. When I say election, I mean in terms of what we think an election is supposed to be. A gentleman presents his arguments. The people then vote. Another gentleman says, well, I object and I propose my counter arguments, and the people vote. Trump certainly won on the grounds of his argument, and he got more votes than any sitting president in the history of this country. However, Joe Biden took the White House because Joe Biden won the game. Elections are not these simple debates and then the people decide. They never have been. It's naive to think so. So my point is simply that Donald Trump certainly had the argument on his side, but the Democrats had the procedure and the strategy. And that's why Joe Biden ended up winning what really mattered, a seat in the White House. For this, I think that we ended up seeing things simmer down a little bit. I mean, of course, January 6th, after the fact, then you had a second impeachment of Trump. You have the insurrection, the criminal charges. You know, look, my friends, it is. Call it whatever you want to call it. It's not the same as 1861, but we are in something, and you can call it whatever you want. I think perhaps it's naive to say civil war because it's an archaic term, but we're certainly facing something. This is perhaps a seditious conspiracy, an ongoing coup, a period of strife that will have a name in the history books. I don't know what you call it. Depends on who wins. If Donald Trump loses, if the America First, the American people lose, if you and I lose, this story about the seditious conspiracy will just disappear. Perhaps it will emerge later on as the noble effort to stop the Russian takeover of the United States. Something like that. I don't know. Maybe they'll make the argument that brave men and women knew that the Russia collusion hoax was real. Maybe. History is written by the victors. Norm Macdonald had a great joke where he says, I was just reading history and this is great news. The good guys have won every time. That's right. If we win, perhaps we will expose what we already know to be true. Barack Obama's administration engaged in a coup, a seditious conspiracy to subvert the will of the American people to retain power, and they probably still do. Now, I think in 2020, they largely use, procedural manipulations to win. That is to say, the game was actually followed as per the rules. Sort of, right? There are a lot of people who think that ballot totals were flipped. Democrats argued this in 2016. Trump supporters argued this in 2020. I'm not so sure that's actually what happened. I view it more of the Democrats used an exploit. They didn't rewrite the code. Democrats did not enter a cheat code to subvert how the game was to be played. They used loopholes and manipulation to play the game in ways that one would arguably say, hey, I think that breaks the rules, but they're like, technically it doesn't. And that is universal mail-in voting, mass ballot harvesting, and lax signature verification policies made it very easy for them to collect large numbers of mail-in ballots from people who typically would not vote, probably did not want to vote, and many of whom probably didn't even sign the dang envelopes. That being said, you could argue this is fraud. You can argue is whatever you want. But my point is simply, I would describe it as a shadow campaign. That's what they wrote in Time magazine. A shadow campaign is not an election. Let me, I always have to pull this one up because I think it's important context for those who aren't familiar with the story. But this story was published by Time magazine. It is historical canon. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. A shadow campaign is not democracy. A shadow campaign is not an election. In fact, Time magazine specifically refers to this as the conspiracy that unfolded behind the scenes. So, I don't know. You tell me where we are. You tell me what this means for this country. Is it not civil war because there's no fighting in the streets? Okay, that's fine. I don't know. We maybe need a new word for it. When you have underground agencies engaging in illicit activities, subversive activities, seditious conspiracies to subvert the will and the laws of this country. What do you call that? A seditious conspiracy, I guess? So is it not a civil war? Man, it's really interesting. Some have called it a cold civil war. And perhaps that is the best way to describe it because, like the Cold War, it's a lot of espionage and underground manipulations. And the Cold War never met the battlefield of U.S. Mobilization of U.S. troops against Soviet troops. But it did result in proxy wars where communist-aligned forces and capitalist-aligned forces with U.S. or Soviet support were fighting. I don't know where this all goes. I can tell you my favorite thing about this. Look at this. Here we go. Wikipedia, allegations of Barack Obama spying on Donald Trump. As part of a large, baseless conspiracy theory, Donald Trump posited that Barack Obama spied on him, which Trump described as the biggest political crime in American history. The series of accusations have been nicknamed Obamagate, blah, blah, blah. Now, why does a Wikipedia article start with, as part of a large, baseless conspiracy theory? Why not just say, Obamagate is a conspiracy theory that posited by Donald Trump. Loaded language and manipulation. The reality is, colloquially speaking, it's the Obama administration that was spying on Donald Trump, which is true. It's a fact. It's remarkable that we have this story. Former FBI attorney pleads guilty in Durham probe. The Trump administration and Trump's associates were being illegally spied on. A lawyer fabricated evidence to get a FISA warrant against the Trump campaign to spy on him. Really amazing, isn't it? That we have Politico right here in 2020. This is former FBI attorney pleads guilty in Durham probe. He admitted to altering an email to seek a surveillance warrant against Carter Page. It's absolutely remarkable that they still claim didn't happen. Well, literally speaking, Barack Obama didn't do it. Is that the argument? That Barack Obama was lurking around every corner, peeking at Donald Trump? That's not what anybody meant. Oh, there's more. I love this stuff. Spygate. Ooh, Spygate was. I love this. Okay. Spygate was a disproven conspiracy theory peddled by U.S. President Donald Trump and his political base on many occasions throughout his presidential term. Do you know why it says Spygate was a disproven conspiracy theory? Because it's a proven conspiracy theory, right? Understand this and how they use manipulative language. Spygate is a conspiracy theory. If they wrote Spygate is a disproven conspiracy theory, that would mean that as of today, it was disproven. They're doing something very special in saying was a disproven conspiracy theory, because they're arguing that at the time there were reports that had disproven it. So it was disproven, but ultimately got that wrong. And it is true. Trump really was spied on, says the Wall Street Journal. Now, to be fair, it is a bit silly. I don't know why they put was, literally. But they do this game where they argue that the Clinton campaign had no association with Barack Obama, that even though we know Biden, Obama, Yates, and I believe Comey and others had a meeting about certain operations against Donald Trump, that Obama wasn't involved. Okay. My friends, you best start believing in cold civil war, civil strife stories. You're in one. Now, where this goes, I don't know. But what's amazing is the speculation right now, and it's been speculated a little bit, but now it's getting juicy. And maybe it's just nonsense. Donald Trump ordered declassified Crossfire Hurricane, right? This is the origins. This is the root of Russiagate. He ordered it declassified. Now, they say there's a binder. I don't know if there actually is. The statements produced by Public, reported by Jesse Waters and the New York Post, are not confidence building. You know, if there was a binder, they might say there is a binder, it is missing, and it's a little weak. However, it seems the idea now is details about the operation and the Five Eyes Spy Club are housed in a binder that has gone missing. I don't know. This one sounds a little bit more fanciful, all right? We know about the spying stuff, but as for this binder, we'll wait and see. But the story is exciting, isn't it? The binder's gone missing. Perhaps Donald Trump took the information on how he was being spied on with him when he left, and they are panicked in trying to find it. And perhaps something is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about and we won't know about because Trump won't reveal his cards until he has the best opportunity to show this operation. And even if it was revealed today, I don't know that it would do enough. But maybe the reason his home was raided, maybe the reason they're trying to criminally charge him is that they know he took classified documents. That's right. I mean, he had plenary declassification powers. The president decides what is classified and what isn't. And as president, he can take these. They're trying to argue he can't do that there is some authority above him. Remarkable, isn't it? There's not. But I wonder if Trump has this and they are sweating bullets knowing he does. And what we are witnessing right now with the courts, with the charges and the fraud case and the criminal attacks against Trump it's war. It is the coup. It is the ongoing civil war. Maybe the reason Donald Trump isn't playing any heavier cards is that if the Supreme Court rules he is immune, he doesn't need to. And so he's keeping these things close to the chest. Or perhaps it's all wishful thinking. Trump is a bumbling dotard who is being roughed around by the deep state, and he will eventually find himself in prison. Maybe. I don't know. No idea. But all I can say is, oh boy, it's getting interesting. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.